Greetings and welcome to another Patch Notes video here at Words About Games, a fortnightly video series that lets us host discussions and post opinion pieces about our various thoughts on games, gaming, and the industry. Today I'm going to be revisiting my most anticipated games of 2019 list. Back in January, as is customary, I put out a list of some of the games I was most looking forward to in the current year. Recently, I cast another look over the list to see what was on it, what had already come out, and what was still left to come, and what had been delayed, of course, because there's always at least one game that ends up not coming out. Just ask Breath of the Wild, which I think ended up on 3 of these lists before eventually seeing the light of day. What I found was that those 16 games were now 11. Technically 12, but by the time this video goes live, I'll probably be playing one of them. There have also been a lot of game announcements, new games that look pretty darn cool, as well as confirmed release dates or windows for great looking games we already knew about. So I figured, why not update the list? This is the first of 3 planned updates to my most anticipated games list, the second coming this summer after E3, and the third just before the big end of year tsunami. 11 of the games from my original list remain, though we've gotten updates for quite a few of them. With Resident Evil 2, Sunless Skies, Metro Exodus, Sekiro, and Katana Zero all released or about to be released, I've added 5 new games to the list. And just quickly, I'll add the usual disclaimer, I've only included games on this list that have been announced in some fashion to be launching in 2019. There's no Death Stranding, The Last of Us Part 2, Halo Infinite, or anything else that has an unknown nebulous release window. Enough games on this list end up being redundant due to their being delayed without me intentionally adding ones that probably aren't coming out this year. With all that being said, let's get on with the list, in order of release date, then alphabetically. Yes, I am really quite excited for Days Gone. While there's been a fairly recent media blitz showing us all kinds of new information about the gameplay and story of the game, I don't see enough people talking about what could be one of the coolest, more intense open-world experiences of 2019. Sure, it's another zombie game in a sea of zombie games, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who haven't recovered from the zombie fatigue that we all suffered a few years ago when every other game felt like it had zombies in it. But damn, there are a lot of cool ideas in Days Gone. The number of enemies that can swarm you is still impressive, or terrifying, depending on your point of view, I guess, and is something I'm really eager to put myself up against. Plus, I'm just a sucker for an open world game that's just a little bit different. Sure, we've seen plenty of post-apocalyptic zombie games, but not ones where we travel on and maintain a motorcycle, dodging zombies as well as wild animals and gangs of humans. I'm also a sucker for developer success stories, and we desperately need some of those right now. Seeing Sony Bend, the studio that created Siphon Filter and worked mostly on handheld games, get a crack at making a big AAA title is a potentially great story. Sony have been killing it with their first-party games in the past few years, and Days Gone looks like it could be another good one to add to the collection. This game trailer gave me goosebumps live on Twitch when it was shown during PlayStation's first State of Play event. It was definitely the highlight of the show for me, not least of which because the game will be coming out so soon. From No Code, the developers of the excellently well-received Stories Untold, which I criminally have yet to play, but have it on my list of games to stream in 2019, Observation is a really interesting-looking puzzle game. After a catastrophe on a space station, crew member Emma Fisher is stuck in an airlock and needs to get out, then trying to figure out what happened and escape with her life. The twist? You're not playing as Emma Fisher, you're playing as the AI that controls the space station. The mood of the game seems to be a survival thriller meets horror, and you're not actually in control of the protagonist, but rather are trying to help her by controlling everything around her. This isn't a linear point-and-click puzzle game, however. No Code have created a miniature open world. Entire puzzles and sections of the game will be entirely optional, rewarding you with additional lore, backstory, and abilities that can help you unlock even more later on. One section, as detailed in an IGN preview, sees you need to jettison an unsafe piece of the station. If you succeed, it detaches safely. If you fail, it shears off violently and tumbles away. Later, you can access it if you succeeded earlier. Observation is a game without game overs. Instead, your mistakes will simply colour the story or your relationship with Emma herself. All in all, this game came out of seemingly nowhere to shoot up to the top of my list of most anticipated games coming out this year. I jumped out of my seat and scared the crap out of Keith when Cadence of Hyrule was announced. While everyone on my Twitter was excited about the Link's Awakening remake, which does look great, don't get me wrong, I came away from February's Nintendo Direct more excited for Crypt of the Necrodancer flavoured Zelda than anything else. Probably because, well, let's face it, I'm a bit weird with my excitement for games and what gets me hyped. I've learned to live with this burden. but also because Crypt of the Necrodancer is somehow still one of the best kept secrets in gaming. This dungeon crawler meets rhythm game is superb, one of the coolest games I've played in the past few years, and it physically hurts that not many people seem to have played it. Hopefully now it's coming to Switch with a Zelda theme and an epically remixed Zelda soundtrack from the sounds of it, it'll finally get all the recognition it deserves. I'm also hopeful Cadence of Hyrule marks the start of something I've been asking for a while now. Early last year I put out a video about Nintendo and said that they would do well to let indie developers loose on their IPs, characters and settings, and Cadence of Hyrule is a perfect example of why. It's a really cool twist on Zelda that Nintendo probably wouldn't have come to on their own. Either way, I'm psyched to pick this up when it comes out this spring. It's been too long since I've seen the singing shopkeeper. I asked Nintendo of America for this on Twitter late last year, and it seems they were benevolent enough to grant my request. Super Mario Maker on Wii U was a wonderful game, and I'm speaking as someone who didn't have the patience or skill to actually sit down and build Mario levels herself. The fact that it's getting a release on Switch where more people will play it and design levels on it warms my heart and has me excited about what I'm likely to find when the game comes out this summer. The Wii U version of Mario Maker really let people showcase their creativity in some brilliant ways. Give me the brutally difficult levels, the incredibly intricate auto levels, the carefully crafted levels, the insane levels, the multi-stage levels with their own self-contained stories. Give me all of this, and so much more. Who knows? Maybe I'll even sit down and force myself to learn the level editor this time around too. I've loved the look of My Friend Pedro since I came across the developer sharing GIFs of the game in development on Twitter years ago, and everything I've seen of the game since last year's big reveal at Devolver Digital's insane E3 press conference just increases my hype for it. We've seen a couple of trailers since I put this on my most anticipated games list at the beginning of the year, including a neat surprise appearance at Nintendo's February Direct, but it's fair to say that the game has already shown everything it needs to grab people's attention. Now I guess it's more about just getting as many people aware of the game as possible. So while this is definitely still one of my most anticipated games of the year, I mean, look at it, how could it not be? I'm just patiently awaiting its release, which has now been confirmed as being sometime this June. Again, there's not much due to report as far as Dragon Quest Builders 2 goes. It showed up at the Nintendo Direct in February with a July 12th release date and a bit more gameplay, but I know what I'm getting into as far as this one goes. The first game was a big surprise for me when it came out in terms of how much I actually enjoyed it, and I've been eager for a second go at its compulsive mix of adventuring and building. The fact that it's coming in the middle of summer, a time which is generally quite slow as far as new game releases go, is exciting for me personally, as it'll give me a chance to really sink my teeth into the game. While the last few months of any given year are always exciting and always throw up strong Game of the Year contenders, games tend to get lost in the shuffle, even good games. Like the original Dragon Quest Builders, a game which I really enjoyed a lot but couldn't dedicate as much time as I wanted to given its release in October of 2016. You might have noticed in this updated list by now that I kinda loved what I saw at the Nintendo Direct that happened in February. Three Houses is an example of Nintendo showing me something I thought I only had a passing interest in and upgrading my hype levels by basically crafting a presentation that feels like it was made just to grab my attention. As with all of Nintendo's traditionally handheld franchises, I've never played a Fire Emblem before. With Switch bringing a lot of these games over to the home console space, and the Big N's announcement last year that a new game in the series would be coming in 2019, I was interested to get my first taste, but not as excited as, say, Patrick, who's looking forward to this game probably more than anything else that's coming out. Enter the Nintendo Direct, which sold me on everything about Fire Emblem Three Houses, from its gameplay to its tactical encounters, characters, story, world, and more. Setting the game in as a school, but letting me play as a teacher as opposed to a student, sounds like a great idea. The whole setting, with the game taking place during a three-way war, sounds like it'll just provide an interesting backdrop to the school-based setting. I could go on, but I'll just sit back and wait patiently for July, trying to distract myself with other games in the meantime. The more I see and hear of Remedy Entertainment's next game, the more eagerly I'm awaiting it. If I ever start to worry that something doesn't look quite right, I remember that Remedy have legitimately never let me down before, except in their staunch refusal to make Alan Wake 2, but that's a completely different topic. They've earned the benefit of the doubt thanks to multiple excellent releases, and truth be told, everything looks fine as far as Control goes. The core combat looks like it could be a little underwhelming, but it's more than made up for by everything around it. The variety of powers that the protagonist has available to her look like they'll be a ton of fun to use and experiment with, and the otherworldly weirdness of the setting and apparent story, which is what Remedy are far and away best known for, both look excellent. Getting the game out in August, as they just announced, before the fall and holiday rush is a solid move as well. After all, it worked for games like Until Dawn. Disappointingly delayed to sometime in autumn, I'm still eagerly anticipating the release of this 3v3 arcade game on home consoles, buoyed by the news that it's not only coming to Xbox One at release, but that it will also release in a Game Pass, which should ensure a healthy player base and make it an easier pitch to get some of my friends to give it a shot with me. Killer Queen Black is a game I've repeatedly gone to bat for with people who haven't heard about it, more so than most of the games. It's got a strong base of fans from people who've been lucky enough to play the arcade game it's based on, but outside of that, very few people have heard of it, understandably. I only know about it because I was lucky enough to see some people playing it at last year's E3, when it was announced during the Nintendo Direct, and have been a strong advocate for it ever since. Its multi-objective based multiplayer matches look really intense and a lot of fun, and now I'm just hoping that we get that sweet release date announcement. I see you out there next week's Inside Xbox. The updated release window on the Steam store page has done nothing to assuage my fears that I'm never going to get to play Ooblets, a game which is sort of a cute cross between Animal Crossing and Pokemon, both of which have new games coming out this year, ironically. I would say I still shout Ooblets every time I see the game, but in the numerous shows and direct likes of 2019 so far, we've seen nary a peep of it. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, particularly in a video about the games I'm most looking forward to playing in 2019, so I'll end this short segment by simply saying that Ooblets is still firmly entrenched on that list. Maybe if we still see nothing about the game by July, which will be when I release an update of this video, I'll bump it in anticipation of a further bigger delay. But right now, from where I'm sitting, Ooblets is still up there as one of the most anticipated games of 2019. Dreams is one of the most intriguing prospects in gaming in 2019. While it took a while for Media Molecule to adequately explain what they were aiming for with this game, having seen what came out of the beta and wondering what could possibly be to come when players start to really get to grips with what the game can do, I'm hyped. Really hyped. If it manages to build up a solid community of creators, this could be one of the best games of the year, or even the generation. I'll admit I was also a little resistant to this game at first because it wasn't another tearaway game. But here's the thing, it could be. It could be just about anything, and I can't wait to see what people come up with. Plus, I imagine that many of the talented developers at Media Molecule will be adding their own creations into the mix. Maybe Dreams will play host to both Tearaway and Little Big Planet continuations, while also being its own wonderful thing. The only thing that's bugging me about this game is how Sony is handling its pre-release marketing. Like I said, it took me a while to really get what Dreams is all about, and I'm someone who watches all of the press conferences and live streams to get all the information. It's kind of my job, after all. Sony is saying very little about Dreams and showing even less. It was missing from the first state of play, despite the creator's early access launching before Days Gone, a game that has received wide-ranging coverage lately. Hopefully the early access will let the game speak for itself, because this could be a really special one. We've learned a lot about Afterparty in the last few months. Not about the game itself, we already more or less knew everything I think we needed to about the game itself, but more about the things surrounding the game. It's coming to the Epic Games Store exclusively. It's also going to be in Game Pass on release day. There's a lot of focus on the elevator pitch of Afterparty, that you play as two best friends who have to drink their way out of hell. It's a good pitch that acts as a great hook for the game, but there's a lot more to it than that. Oxenfree, Night School's previous game, had a lot of heart and emotional moments to it, and Afterparty will no doubt follow in its predecessor's footsteps in that regard. I'm fully expecting the game to make me cry, as well as make me laugh as I try to outdo Satan in a drinking game to earn my freedom from hell. And I'm totally okay with that. It's probably not a good idea to try to talk about this game too much right now. As I type the script for this video, Microsoft have just announced a new episode of Inside Xbox for next week, and there's a chance that Ori and the Will of the Wisps could be a big part of that. Anything I say about the game would be speculative based on a trailer from E3, which was 10 months ago. It's my #1 most anticipated game coming out of Xbox Studios right now, at least of the ones we know of. So I'm rooting for us to see a bunch of new stuff next week, and maybe even narrow down a release date, but I'm also mindful that all of that would fit into an E3 press conference a lot better, especially as E3 is only 2 months away. I fell in love with Ori and the Blind Forest, and I'm sure I'll fall in just as much love with the sequel, maybe even more so. So I'll leave it at that for now, except to say that if you haven't played Ori and the Blind Forest, it's available in Game Pass, and I highly recommend you go and check it out. The internet, or rather a specific subsection of the internet, has started to turn against The Outer Wilds after it was announced that it would be an Epic Game Store exclusive for a while. Apparently, it's no longer the best thing ever, although since there's no previous game in the series for people to review bomb, the anger is spilled over onto Twitter instead. For the reasons I've outlined in many previous podcasts on the subject, I'm perfectly fine with the Epic Game Store and not overly concerned or surprised by the developers and publishers who move their games away from Steam. Why am I talking about storefronts? Well, there's very little to actually talk about in this video that I didn't talk about previously as far as game information goes. That's the double-edged nature of doing these kinds of update videos. While I've been able to highlight and excitedly talk about some new games, some of the other ones on my list are still here because they're launching in 2019 and I am mega excited for them, but there's not really much new to say. The Outer Wilds looks great and I can't wait for it. I just need to say a little bit more than that. Both Bayonetta 3 and Dying Light 2 are occupying the same spot on this list, right at the end. When I crafted the list back in January, I added both of them as they've been spoken of as coming out in 2019, which is the only criteria they need to get on here. As well as my being excited for them, of course. But we haven't heard anything about either game for a while, and given the nature of their respective reveals, I'm starting to wonder if either game is actually going to come out this year at all. In fact, in the case of Bayonetta 3, it seems likely that the game will slip into 2020. Nintendo has a packed year, as evidenced by the numerous Nintendo games in this list alone, plus games like Animal Crossing and Pokemon coming later. And that, coupled with the fact that all we've seen is a very brief teaser trailer, makes it seem likely that the game won't even be out this year. Dying Light 2 feels like Metro Exodus. As with the latter game, Dying Light was shown off at Microsoft's E3 press conference last year, before going dark until it was reshown with an adjusted release date, delaying it into the following year. It feels like we're on the same trajectory again, and I'm fully expecting to hear nothing more about this game until E3, where we find out it's coming in, February 2020. I'd like to be wrong, of course, but we'll see. I've kept both of these games on the list because nothing has been officially announced. It's just my gut feeling about both of these games, and I'm still incredibly excited for them. But if we don't hear or see anything substantial by E3, or we find out they've been delayed, I'll knock them off the list in place of something else. Here's hoping I'm surprised. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please leave us a comment, like, or subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We've got tons of awesome videos coming every week, including review impressions, indie game of the week, debate-driven top 5 lists, video essays, and our weekly podcast where we discuss games, gaming culture, and the games industry. We also stream 3 times a week at twitch.tv/wordsaboutgames. But most importantly, have a fantastic day.